Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to A Certain Point of View podcast. I'm your host, Aaron, along with avid MMO player Michael.
Say hi. How's it going, guys?
All right. The human Star Wars Wikipedia, Eric.
Hello.
And the biggest mouth from the East, Shane.
Oh! From the East.
All right.
It's because he's Asian.
Yeah, it is because the human Star Wars Wikipedia.
Okay.
Yeah,
I get
okay.
that.
Yeah. All right, Eric.
That jackass.
Hello.
World of Warcraft, and created by Blizzard, it was announced back in September 2001. Biggest mouth from the East, released November of 2004. Blizzard pretty much made an MMO giant. It's been, yeah. All right, it's been out for so long. So many people have played it. Usually, almost everyone at least in the gaming industry knows of it, or at least.
Am I the only one here that's never played it?
Probably. I mean, Shane played it for a day, but I don't think that really counts.
Yeah, okay. Counts.
So now, it's been out since 2004, so that's been, 8 years? Is that right? What's this, 11? Almost 8 years. So now we have a new MMO coming out. Star Wars The Old Republic. It's being created by BioWare, a very well-known, gaming... very well known in the gaming industry. Yeah. They announced it in October of 2008, and it is now supposed to be coming out this holiday, 2011. Right? So.
Hopefully.
Yeah. Well, I didn't think it was going to be coming out this soon, and then they just recently announced it that it's going to come out this holiday.
It definitely surprised me that they're definitely releasing the holiday 2011. I thought that was a little earlier than I expected.
I had heard that they were going to do the holiday 2011, but it didn't really click until you came into my room the other day. And you're like, holiday, I'm like, crap, that's really soon.
Yeah.
I'm not ready yet.
It's great. Yeah, I was
I got so much to do.
I have
so much life to live.
I need to divorce my wife and leave my kids too. You
don't have a lot of time for that now. Yeah. I was expecting at earliest it would be like spring of 2012. Yeah. Was the earliest I was expecting it. But now that it's been hit now, I'm excited. I'm pumped. All of us have seen Star Wars or somewhat of a fan of it.
It's all right.
Yeah, it's all right, Eric.
No,
okay.
I try really good.
Well, that's the biggest thing about it. I've loved Star Wars pretty much my entire life. I've always liked it. And when episode, and I remember loving Return of the Jedi. And then I remember when Episode 1 came out, when I was like second or third grade. I saw it like 3 times. And I was obsessed with Darth Maul. I thought it was the sweetest movie ever. And then that's when I just delved into the fiction, and I thought it was the greatest thing ever. And now I'm 23, married, and I have 2 kids. And I'm still obsessed with it. Yeah. Looking up, crap on it like every night.
I'm not really an MMO guy, but I definitely am a Star Wars guy, so like... I'm one of those guys that will never play an MMO, but when Star Wars says they're going to bring one out, and it's going to be as good as the Old Republic is, I'm there, so... Yeah. Their marketing's worked to that point, Right. They're already going to bring in a whole new audience of people that have never played.
Yeah, which helps with kind of this group we have, because we have, Shane and Eric, which, they both like Star Wars. They've played a lot of games, but, they haven't played any MMOs. They haven't played WoW or, Guild Wars or any of these, ones that have been around. Yeah, ones that have been around forever, lots of people have played them. Then there's Michael, who's played tons of them. Like, he's played all sorts of the MMOs. And then I played, WoW, I played Guild Wars. I played a couple. And I know a little bit about Star Wars, so I'm kind of in the middle of the two. But what you were touching on, Shane, you still look up all the stories, all this background of, like, there's so much to the Star Wars universe.
Yeah, I haven't tapped into it. I haven't read all the books. I have the most recent printed version of the Star Wars Encyclopedia, and I've watched all the movies 1,000 times. I read the important comics. What people would say. Eric would tell me these comics are in these books. There's hundreds of novels.
Well, yeah, but
this one's important. I'd read that one.
Yeah, I think the main thing is like the game is going to appeal to the people that have been with Star Wars since the beginning, and they've read everything and they've seen everything. And it's also going to appeal to the people that have only ever seen the movies,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I'm sure it'll appeal to people that normally know what Star Wars is. You got a whole generation of kids now that have only ever seen the Clone Wars. They've never even seen the Star Wars movies,
Oh, yeah.
They see Star Wars on the MMO, they're going to be like, oh, what's that?
And actually, and also you kind of got like that's going to appeal to just the people who played KOTOR also.
Yeah.
Because
nice Old Republic.
I'll tell you what, I'm incredibly excited that BioWare is making this. I mean, I know BioWare has never made an MMO. I can't say they've never made a bad game. You know, if you want to go by Metacritic, they've never made a bad game. In fact, every game they made has actually been pretty critically acclaimed. They made a Sonic game, okay, when Sonic was at its lowest, which is about 2 years ago. But most people consider this its lowest. You know, they made an MMO. I mean, not MMO. They made an RPG for Sonic on a DS, and it was good. You know, I mean, like GameSpot said it was the best DS game they've ever played. Like the lowest it got was like a 7 out of 10, which is considered good. You know what I mean? Like, you know, like it's, you know, it's fully voiced. Like, I guess what I'm excited about it almost more than anything is because, like, I know the stories that BioWare can tell are always they're always exciting and they're always captivating, and like, you know, I'm excited getting into the MMO aspect with all you guys. But I'm excited for the story. Like, what's his name? I can't remember his name. You know, like the head dude making this game. Okay, the guys who came out at E3 wearing, you know, the Jedi robes, stuff like that. He's saying that people have been saying for almost a decade, we want KOTOR 3, but this is enough content in this game, just story content, to be KOTOR 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Like, that's how much story there is. It's the biggest game ever made. That's what they're saying. And like I've read, like they want to make this last for 20 years. Like they said in year 2020 they want to have like 300 more planets or something like that.
Right.
And they want all those planets to have.
That's insane. That's crazy.
Yeah. And they say, like, when you run across a planet full sprint, like, you know, these areas are big. Like, if you run across from one end of the planet to the other with like nothing in your way and no enemies or anything, like it would take you like, I think it's half an hour or it might have been an hour to run across this planet. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, I mean, that's, for me, that's huge because it's only one planet. The game is gonna be released with, you know, dozens of planets, dozens of worlds. You know what I mean?
Right. So the thing about BioWare is I mean, with KOTOR, I mean that was a game changer as far as RPGs. I mean, they really, not only the gameplay and then the story, but I mean, obviously it appealed to a lot because it brought the Star Wars name. But I mean, it's just the gameplay and the story that it was a game changer. And when you look at some of the more recent additions, such as Mass Effect and Dragon Age and some of the newer RPGs they've been releasing, I don't think you can argue that those have been game changers in the RPG world as well. I think that the Mass Effect especially is slightly more critically acclaimed than the Dragon Age series, especially when you bring in
both highly lauded.
The controversy between the Origins and Dragon Age 2 and then the changes they've made, but specifically Dragon Age Origins and Mass Effect 1 and 2, I mean, those are definitely game changers as far as story and the way that your actions orient the rest of the world and the story in general. And so it'll be really interesting to see how BioWare is able to take their expertise in those areas.
Like, do you think the stories can be as epic because, you know, you're not like the main character saving this universe? They have to create a story where everyone plays a role. You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying?
For Tor?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, what they're talking about, they're talking about how each character is a hero. You know, so I think with this whole, you know, they call it the fourth pillar of MMOs.
Yeah,
story. You're going to be able to focus a lot more on what your character does to the surrounding story and environment, all that stuff. So I don't know. I mean, I think what they're trying to do is they're trying to make your character feel like he's affecting the world around you, or she.
Yeah, I mean, let's just talk about Mass Effect for a minute, Michael. I mean, I played it. You played it, Michael. Aaron, you played a little bit of it.
I haven't gotten too far into it.
And Eric, you know, I've been trying to get you to play it for a while.
Really? Yeah. I know.
And you promised me you would.
I will.
You better.
I'll get
you told me if I read Harry Potter, you're like, you know, you've been reading Harry Potter. I'm gonna start playing.
Well,
I finished book 7 like.
Smeagol lied.
I mean, Michael. I mean, I grew up. I was and I always will be a hardcore Japanese RPG fan.
Mm-hmm, absolutely.
Okay, you know, I mean, like Final Fantasy 7 is, you know.
I mean,
it's my favorite game.
You can't really turn me away from turn-based games. I wish they still made them.
Like,
to be honest
you know,
with you. I love the turn-based old schools. So.
Like, you know, I feel like Japanese developers, and it hurts me to say this, they've been really falling behind. You know, Western developers. You know, like BioWare, Epic. You know,
Bethesda.
Yeah, Bethesda, Activision.
Yeah, Mythic. Yeah.
You know, all these guys. You know, they're innovating the game industry, making all these awesome things. And the Japanese, over there in the East, they've been falling behind in innovation and stuff like that. Like it's like just like Sonic did when he transitioned from 2D to 3D. It's a little rougher than it was for Mario. I hope and believe that they're going to find the right way to make modern RPGs. You know what I mean? Like they make a bunch of awesome DS and PSP ones that are brand new. Final Fantasy 13. It's just pretty mixed scores. I mean, I've loved from what I've played, but right. I can't deny
but at the same time, you have someone like me that completely despises the direction they went with it.
Right? Yeah, exactly. And I can't deny its linearity. Okay, it looks like they're going to fix that with Final Fantasy 13 Versus. I'm hoping they do. That's the same guy. I mean, the guy who's directing it, I can't pronounce his crazy Japanese name, but he's the guy who did Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2.
Excellent.
You know what I'm saying? And I'm excited about that. I hope they pick up the pace. About to tell you, like, the guys have been doing for me recently. Like lately, it's been BioWare. Like I played, Mass Effect 1 a few years ago, and I thought it was one of the greatest games I played. Actually, I didn't really connect. I mean, I didn't really connect the dots. Like these are the same people who make KOTOR, which also when I played at the time when I was like 12, I thought was incredible.
Right, and the thing about Mass Effect is, as soon as it came out, it jumped into so many people's top 10, top 5 RPGs of all time. You read these gaming reviews, and you see Mass Effect is the only recent, modern age game that's making these guys lists. They'll have
they have a bunch of stuff from like 10 years ago.
Right, you'll have Chrono Trigger in there, and then all of a sudden, right before, beside Chrono Trigger, you're throwing Mass Effect in there, which is crazy to think about.
Oh yeah, and like, Aaron, you gotta play Mass Effect.
I'll get to it. Right now, I'm getting KOTOR and KOTOR 2 done, building up towards Tor. I mean, I'll get to those. I'm trying to play some more of the BioWare games.
So I mean, the idea here is that I think a problem that you bring from the MMO world is so many MMOs you play, you feel like you're kind of we talked about this earlier, in a museum, looking at a world of lore. Where you kind of see everything.
You told me about that. You can read stuff and find a bunch of stuff.
Right, you see everything that happens, but you feel like you're a background character in the large epic story that's going on in this world. And the idea that Tor is trying to bring to the table is that you're no longer a background piece, that you're a centerpiece, but everybody can be a centerpiece at once. And it's definitely an interesting concept, and it'll be interesting to see how they can deliver on that.
Yeah, do you think they'll be successful?
It really is kind of hard to tell. I mean,
it's hard to tell
how they do it.
You can look at other MMOs and how they've attempted to try to fix the problem, but at the end of the day, it's how do they approach it and how do they execute?
You know what I mean?
What they've came out to say with Tor is that it's not like if you start out as a Sith warrior, you're not going to be one of a million Sith warriors in this army. You're going to be like the main Sith's apprentice. So you're a big deal. So everybody that plays a Sith warrior is going to be that big deal. So I do wonder how they're going to do that whenever it comes to the flashpoints when everybody comes together.
Right. So to kind of bring this together from an MMO perspective, I think that kind of what our idea of it, and Aaron and I have had discussions about this, is if a lot of you have played Warcraft, World of Warcraft specifically, maybe like, for instance, the Death Knight, when you create a Death Knight, you're kind of phased out and you go through a story and you're like the main apprentice to the Lich King, and as you develop as a character, you're in an instance away from all the other characters in the world, but they kind of seamlessly integrate you with the story, and then they kind of throw you into the world with all the other players after the main storyline is done, and so you feel like invigorated and empowered by this storyline, and it's almost like they add this epic storyline along with the MMO aspects, and there's been MMOs that have phased you out and done it almost like an instance, and there's been MMOs that have done like world events occurring at one time. For instance, we were talking about Lord of the Rings Online earlier, and all the storylines for a character starting off on Lord of the Rings Online would be you starting, and for instance, starting a dwarf out, you start off, you talk to Gandalf, you go in the caves and you do a mission, and you come out, and all of a sudden you're enlisted in the army, and you're trying to go out and quest for the war for Middle Earth. But so there's so many different ways that people have done this, and I said earlier, the Warhammer did the idea where, it was just recurring world events where if you stepped in the middle of it, you saw maybe half of it, but you could wait and then it would happen again, and World of Warcraft has kind of used a little bit of both and integrated them both in, so it'll be interesting to see how seamless the transition is between you're phased out, you're in the real world, or even if they do that, and how often they use that and what different techniques they use, and maybe if they even invent some new techniques that we haven't seen before in the MMO world.
Basically, track record for just it's a story. I mean, in my mind, I think like if for some reason, which I don't really think this will happen, if it fails in the MMO aspect, I keep thinking like story wise, it still seems like it's gonna be an awesome game. Because you know what I'm saying.
Well, I mean, if it fails, then they're gonna have. Everyone's got to pay a monthly fee to play through the storyline of the game, and then when you do certain raids and whatnot, it's going to be a problem.
And then eventually you'll get done with the storyline, and you'll have, what do you guys call it, endgame?
Yeah. Right, but the endgame is the core of the story in almost every MMO you're going to find. Like the endgame is the pinnacle of the story that's going on, and that's why it's so desirable, because
everyone plays up to that point to find out what's going to happen and where it's going to go to and whatnot. I mean, like in World of Warcraft, back in up to level 60, Michael, you better explain like that. Like playing from level 1 to level 60 back before there were any expansions for WoW. I mean, building up to fight, in some of the raids like Molten Core, where you're going against Ragnaris, and some of the other bigger ones, like seeing how the story progressed up to that point, and playing through it and getting more gear, and just some of that part is what kept a lot of people playing, because like those were really hard. Is that where you're going with that?
Right.
More just story elements as well of that part.
Right. Well, what they bring in and is the pinnacle of it. So say they bring out an expansion, the pinnacle of the expansion is the last raid dungeon that they introduced for that expansion, or Lord of the Rings, like they played out the story for Lord of the Rings and then introduced Mines of Moria. So now you're playing through a expansion through Moria, and you're developing storyline for that, and it's the storyline goes along with the content, and to keep players playing, like the content is never fully unlocked until you achieve the ultimate end game. Yeah, you understand what I'm saying? So like it's almost like in order for the story to be fully achieved, the gameplay has to be there with it for the in-game content to be played and to be enjoyed. So,
jumping back with how we were getting into the phasing idea of it, we were kind of discussing more of where the Old Republic's kind of going to start. Eric's been watching a lot of the timelines and whatnot, and we've seen a lot of the trailers. I mean, the first big trailer they released was back in what was it? 09?
08 or 09.
I think it was 09 when they released Malgus attacking the Jedi Temple.
It's called Deceived.
Yeah. And it was an amazing trailer, but that one, like Eric, you were talking about a treaty that was going on in this time, because this takes place.
The basic story is this takes place 300 years after KOTOR, and it also takes place 4,000 years or 3,500 years, 3,700 years, whatever it is, before the Star Wars movies. So you don't really have to worry about too much what happened in KOTOR. You don't have to worry about too much about where you're going to get to when it comes to the Star Wars movies. So they gotta, they have a pretty open area to play around with.
No lore or anything.
So the idea is that, of course, there's the Republic and the Jedi, and then there's the Sith and the Empire, and that they've had this battle for the past I don't know how many years. And they are going to, the Sith Emperor invites the Republic and the Jedi to a peace treaty to delegate, these conditions of peace. And when they do that, as the peace talks are going on, the Sith attack Coruscant and take it and hold it ransom so that they can have better, they can hold sway over the Republic, make them agree to things they don't want to agree to, and the game takes place after this treaty. So from what I understand, the game starts as this kind of loose and broken peace is between these two factions, or 4 factions, I guess. But I keep wondering if maybe the game will start with the war breaking back out, or I'm not really sure exactly how they're going to do it.
And that's where we were kind of discussing with the phasing idea, where maybe it'll start before the piece ends. Like maybe everything's still at peace, and you're learning, maybe becoming a Jedi. You're an apprentice or whatnot for the Sith warrior or whatnot, and you're kind of learning kind of the core elements of each class or whatever you choose. And then maybe it phases you into the real world where now you're at war. That cinematic's occurred, and there's no longer the peace that there currently was.
Yeah.
So
yeah, maybe. I don't know. I mean, they really have, they have a couple of thousand years to play with before the next big Star Wars, canon happens. So they can pretty much do whatever they want. Yeah, whatever fits, best gameplay and satisfies people and all that stuff.
And which is good because I mean it's required for any MMO game that grabs onto a lore that pre-exists, that you must be able to almost play around with it. And that sounds kind of tragic in a way because of the high authority that we hold story and lore in. But at the same time, you have to understand that, even writing a book, that's how it works. You got to play with it and mix things together. So
I mean, pretty much they've put themselves in an era where they can say, okay, we're going to do Star Wars, but there's no consequences. I mean, we don't have to have just 2 Sith. We can have 1,000 Sith. We don't have to have just
There's some things they gotta buy.
We don't have to have this stuff happen. We can do whatever we want. It's just the rules of Star Wars are still there, but we can break the story.
As long as it follows the general elements and lore of Star Wars and doesn't conflict.
As long
with
as there's Jedi and there's
future and
starships and there's tauntauns, people are going to be happy. They're going to be, let's play Star Wars, but it's like when you're a kid and you have all the toys. Like, if I never played the Battle of Hoth, I always made up my own stories. Just using the figures. I remember like, no, there's only 3 AT-ATs,
Right.
There's not 60, Like, some people like, I'm only going to do this because this is the canon story, I think BioWare has put themselves in an area where they can do whatever they want and create new Star Wars, which is what I'm excited about.
Which that gives them a lot of time, too. I think Shane was saying before that they're talking about trying to have this game where they have like 20 years of content that they can do, basically.
That's what they want to last decades.
Yeah, for like, they can keep producing, I mean, WoW's already been doing it where like they've had, different expansions coming out.
Right. Well, we just said it's been from 2004 to now, and I mean, just recently on IGN, flipped over and saw that they're even looking at a new expansion for the Tales of Pandaria, and so I mean, the further you go, that they have no plans of slowing down.
No, well, they don't have an end point, right? Like with Tor, they would have a point where okay, they've had 3,000 years have passed in this MMO now. You can't go any further than that.
Right. Well, with Warcraft, WoW, you have Warcraft 1, 2, and 3, the RTSs, and now when they created World of Warcraft, they had a similar circumstance where they could kind of do with the lore what they wanted, and so now they have from the present to the future to toy with and do whatever they want with, and obviously that's created some issues, and they've kind of made stuff up as they've gone, and as far as Star Wars goes, they might not necessarily always have that ability, but at the same time, if you think far enough ahead, I think that you're going to be able to fix those problems. So,
especially on that, like the game lasting decades. All right. Like, one thing I think that's so cool that they've done, and it's really smart, is they've chosen to have an art style. Like WoW. Like, I've read. Like, look at Final Fantasy 14 now. Like, the game, it came out buggy and the economy is broken, but the game is the most gorgeous MMO ever. But in 10 years, it's not gonna look that good. And like, WoW still might look good because it has an art style, kind of like Okami, for the PS2. It came out for the Wii and it still looked good, and it'll still look good 10 years from now.
Right.
Like, you know what I'm saying?
A simplistic art style that survives the test of time, instead of trying to wow you with the graphics. You do something that's fairly simplistic but is upgradable, because WoW's upgraded over time. Each expansion and each time there's been ability to increase your resolution, to increase the graphics on the game, and they've continued to do so, but just a little at a time, and they've allowed themselves for room for improvement, and I think that for a long-lasting MMO, and as far as WoW goes, you talk about WoW, you talk about EverQuest, you talk about Lord of the Rings Online, some of the specific ones, Guild Wars, League of Heroes, just these MMOs that have stood the test of time, and you think about, okay, so their simplicity and their ability
they didn't go for like hardcore realism
to evolve over time, right?
All right, touching out of that, so basically about the story, they have a lot to deal with that they can do with.
Yeah, it's gonna be awesome.
Yeah, getting into some of the gameplay stuff, I was just showing Michael today, I think it was, or yesterday, a video about possible raids, and that there's this one video where it shows, I think Eric showed it to me first, where it shows that they're gonna have, each faction will have their own reasons as to why they're going to this certain raid, which MMO does the same thing, or World of Warcraft does the same thing with their MMO, where they they'll have a raid, and this faction is going for this reason, this faction is going for this reason. They might be similar, but they have their own. With this video, they showed drop pods landing in this snowy environment, and that they have some kind of mission that they're going for. Now, Michael, directed more towards you right now because they haven't. Shane and Eric haven't played a whole lot of raids or MMOs, obviously. Seeing that trailer of how they're kind of projecting their raids and playing, the raids you've done in World of Warcraft and any other MMOs you've played, does it look decent from how they're projecting it? Do you think it's gonna there's stuff they're missing in that, or?
It's very interesting to look at what they were doing, because when you have the Sith and Jedi aspect both kind of almost working towards a common goal in say a raid, you wonder how much of that is PvE and how much of that is a PvP aspect that they're going to bring to the table, because obviously I think it would go kind of counterproductive to Star Wars lore if you have the Sith and the Jedi technically working together, maybe both doing something at the same time or working against each other. So I think that's going to add a new element to say versus World of Warcraft, where the Horde and Alliance can technically team up together and achieve a common goal, whereas I don't think in the Star Wars lore, obviously
it's happened before in other mediums in the Star Wars canon, where obviously it's not it's not ideal, but the idea is that there's basically nothing different between a Jedi and a Sith. It's just they just have different
points of view.
Different points of view.
In that idea, is there anything that when they pair up, is it normally smaller ideals? It's this Sith and this Jedi who have a common enemy that they pair up with?
To make an example, in the newest books that are coming out right now that take place 40, 50 years after Return of the Jedi, there's this it's I don't know, we're not really sure exactly what it is, but it's called Abloth. It's this it's this very, very powerful entity in the Force that they don't know what it is. The only comparison I can really make of it, it seems like it's a demon or some kind of devil. It has a certain supernatural element to it that far surpasses the Jedi and the Sith separate. But if they come together, they're able to fight together. Of course, you can never trust the Sith; they're always going to backstab you when they can. But there's a very, very loose alliance right now with Luke's Jedi Order and this colony of Sith that were found. And
I guess technically, because we don't know how long this peace treaty is going to last. I mean, technically, this could be moving forward with the peace treaty before the war breaks out. And there might be some instances and some dungeons, maybe and we're not necessarily sure about that. I think from the looks of the trailer, however, that there was some really cool things, and I think that those of you familiar with MMOs, if you watch the trailer, you'll recognize a lot of those elements. You'll see some ranged DPS going to work on kind of some stationary, some turrets, and it's kind of like some defense of this area. And
what it looked like they were doing is there's a fortress or something on this planet.
Well, whatever I saw of it, I think it's like a prison that is. It's not only is it keeping people out of it, but it's keeping something inside of it.
Right.
And what happens is there's these drop ships that fall, and then you just see shots of a bunch of Sith on this blue, dark world, and they're all having the red lightsabers out, and it's a cool sight. And they infiltrate this prison, and I think the idea is that the final boss is whatever is
inside of it, right? And
I would wonder why they want to get in there, And is it the Jedi that are keeping it in there, or is this a new faction, or I don't know. I mean, it's left a lot. There's a lot open to find out story-wise what's going on. But yeah, it was a really cool trailer. I'm excited for. I don't know. I'm really excited for the Sith stuff. I definitely want to do Sith at one point.
Definitely emphasizing the player versus environment aspect of the game, the whole PvE aspect. I mean, there's these Sith infiltrating this prison or whatever it seems to be with this big boss inside of it, and it's interesting because there's this one thing that it's going to take all these Sith to bring down. I mean, what kind of force or what kind of creature this must be that it takes all these numerous, Sith or Jedi to deal with. It's just there's kind of a wow factor in that in and of itself. And I think another thing you notice about the trailer is the different. They're kind of moving around in groups. Yeah. Whether all these groups are in the same raid at once and what's going on, and it seems that they're working in small team oriented based groups, and I think that's something maybe we're definitely going to touch on later in the different group mechanics of the game. But I thought the most intriguing thing to me was just to see all these Sith walking around in these like customized super armor outfits, running at this thing. It's just very cool. I think, Eric, you saw you guys were talking about a video that you saw kind of the evolution of the armor.
Well, yeah, I mean, basically, the cool thing about doing these classes is, like, Star Wars is all about archetypes. It's all about, this is the farm boy and the wizard and the princess and the rogue, So you kind of have, Han Solo is a smuggler, So, like, I want to be, when I play Star Wars, I want to be Boba Fett. I want to be Han Solo. I want to be Darth Vader. I want to be Darth Maul, The idea that you can split your, say like a Sith warrior, you can either go the way of Vader and you have all this awesome armor and modifications, and
I think it even said that
you're starting to rot, and so you have to create new prosthetics and stuff.
Yeah, I think it said you can even kind of make yourself mechanical.
Or you could go the other way. You could go more of a Sidious, where you you tattoo or like Maul, you tattoo yourself, or you start using more sinister or dark magic or whatever, like the Night Sisters use in the Clone Wars. So I mean, there's definite archetypes that you'll be able to play as. I'm really excited to be able to just go out there and be like, I want to be Boba Fett. I'm gonna do a bounty hunter today.
I'm excited. Yeah, I'm excited about the customization for everything too.
Definitely.
Like one thing I think is so cool is like they claim to have like 100 or so hours for like a character you choose. Well, and actually, one question I had is, okay, you could be a Sith and you can be like a Vader type or a Maul type. Do those two have different stories?
No, I think that that each class has its own story, and there's 8 classes, so there's going to be 8 separate stories. I don't think that. Obviously, I don't know, but I'm pretty sure that you'll stay on the same basic storyline.
Yeah.
They're definitely emphasizing the idea of choosing things. Like, you make a choice and you can't go back, you can't save it, you can't say, I need to hit the reset button. You make a choice and that affects how your story goes. So, I mean, maybe if you choose to upgrade, your lightsaber over your force powers, the story will kind of go that way. I mean.
I don't think it'll go too much that way. I think it'll go more choice-oriented of what you choose for the story element. Mm-hmm. They should have, with the 8 classes, the 8 stories, but it's more of how you want to play that class in general.
And you also got, with Star Wars and with the Force, you have the concept of light and dark side points. Yeah. You can play as a Sith, yet you still kind of you still kind of fall towards the light, where you're trying to be a little bit more moral in your choices, or you can just go the other way and just be as bad as you can.
Same with Jedi, you can make a bad Jedi.
So obviously that will change your storyline, but you just gotta think of it as a tree that's gonna keep sprouting more and more paths, more and more branches.
I mean, just think of it, if there's 8 classes, and if I become like a Jedi, I have supposedly with the first expansion, or the first expansion when the game first comes out, that's like 100 hours or so with one character, and there's 8 characters. That's 800 hours. Yeah. And just difference. I mean, and you would think that within each class, you can have multiple paths in your story.
Yeah, you could have. I'm sure they're gonna have.
You can play like a Jedi maybe 5 times. As a different story.
As a Star Wars completist, I'm almost scared about how much time I'm gonna have to waste learning all these stories. Right. Because I'm like, my least I think the class from the very bottom that I want to play is going to be like the trooper, but I'm going to have to play him so I can learn a story. They all seem to have awesome stories.
Right. At the same time, you have to wonder, in the spirit of MMO, what at what point do all those stories tangle together into one large story? And so, like, say, yeah, you have to play each to get their background story, but is their background story only lasting from 0 to 20, or is it lasting throughout the whole game, or whatever? I'm not sure what was the level cap.
I haven't seen a level cap yet. I don't know if I'm assuming probably somewhere in the 50s or so, but I haven't seen an actual level cap where it's going to end.
Depends on how the level. I mean, a lot of MMOs like to go with the more levels. That way, each level you can customize more and it goes by quicker. But anyway, regardless. The idea of having to play the trooper and the Jedi, but at what point do those come together to where you're all interacting towards one story in and of itself as like a whole? So, it's kind of, you say maybe like 100 hours to do this, but at the same time, like, is a lot of that built on predicating for the larger story, or is a lot of that spin on like your self story, or how much are the two intertwined? And if they are intertwined, how does the fact that you're deciding something, the fact that someone else is deciding something, are you playing the same game in the same universe and getting different results on the same server? Like,
it really is amazing about, this game has been announced for how long and been out in the public, how much we really don't know about it, how it's going to play, There's still so much more.
I think Game Informer was talking about was like your NPCs in your party, like your non-playable characters, which is a tradition in every BioWare game. I feel like, they're saying they're going to have, strong story elements, just like every BioWare game preceding tour. So it makes you wonder, like in Mass Effect, for every character in your party, you have to go and you learn their backstory and you do the part of the game that involves them. And that takes like 8-10 hours, and that's really fun. Like I'm wondering with all this stuff, are they going to have something that strong and also?
Well, they've confirmed that there'll be companion characters that your character can create a romantic affair with, or that they haven't really said like how many companion characters you can have at one time, or if you can get them all, or you can pick and choose which ones you want to have. Because there's some that seem that they're like the Sith warrior has like this big hulking slave that he uses, but the bounty hunter has a little Jawa,
Right.
So obviously the Jawa can't be that deep of a character because it's kind of just a silly little munchkin,
Right. Well, and it's interesting just the whole idea of companion characters in general, because looking at it from an MMO standpoint, it solves the whole grinding problem in a way, like, because that's a big issue with people playing MMOs is they kind of get bored, slaving away soloing and doing solo quests, and so the idea of having companion characters to do some of the less story intensive quests and going out and grinding a little bit and leveling, the idea of having these companion characters with you really helps out, and it adds so much depth to the story to where you're not really getting bored with just soloing.
And because if you have your companion character with you, and say you're a Sith and you do some Sithy things, your companion character could not agree with that. It forwards that story within the larger story of what your character is doing.
Right.
Like they've said that you can get to the point where your characters turn on you. Or they kill themselves or something.
Well, going with that, it could be the opposite, where maybe you are a Sith and you have an evil companion with you, and maybe you start doing more light side kind of things.
That's true.
To where this Sith is like maybe you're almost an apprentice or maybe you have an apprentice as your companion almost, or something along those lines, to where he's like, well, this guy's getting weak, I'm gonna kill him. Yeah. So then you have to kill your companion or fight your companion, and it could be very interesting how they play that out. I think it'd be really neat.
And I think something we were talking about earlier with the companions is okay, we have this group, it's an MMO, so we have group-oriented, person-oriented groups that we're sending into these instances or these dungeons or these raids. How do NPCs come into play with that?
Yes, do we all bring our NPCs?
Right, and if you both...
I was saying, like,
that's what we were talking about.
10 NPCs.
Do you have different R2 units that you both can bring in? And if you do, are they, just generically, do they have the same story, or do they have different stories because one's yours and one's mine?
Yeah. I don't know. I haven't really looked into it.
Can they fall in love?
From what I've understood is, like, that class gets these characters as their companion. Like, each bounty hunter will be able to get the Jawa called Blizz.
Yeah. Right. They were saying that in the E3 in this year of 2011, they showed that bounty hunters can get Jawas, and they said that the bounty hunters are the only ones that are going to be able to get Jawas.
Yeah.
But there's also going to be other class-specific companions, depending on which class.
So was it a specific Jawa
I think
or
it's
a generic
specific Jawa that you can customize.
Yeah.
Like you could change their armor, the way they look, and all that stuff, just like you can your character. I think it's in the same way. Like everybody is playing. If you're a Sith warrior, everybody in the Sith warrior class is playing this character's apprentice. You know, like. Right. So I think the companion characters will act in the same way. Like,
so you're saying
you might be able to custom. Like, yeah, if you're a Jedi and you have a little armed tech droid, you know, you might be able to customize the way they look. But I think that they might be called, you know, they might have the same name as everybody else.
I would really want to change their name. Like, I want to be able to make my own.
That would be really cool. Like, but with it being fully voiced, you know, how are you going to do that?
Yeah, that's true. You know, yeah,
that's the one thing about being fully voiced.
Yeah, so I mean, probably most names, except for your own, and they'll probably just refer to you in like a third person kind of state, like, or you know, hey you know, or, you know, it's not going to be a Shane, you know.
What?
Yeah, exactly. You know, so unless they really go, you know, really far into depth with like the voice acting of it, whatever, like they got to come up with every single name, which they're not going to do that. So
no, I mean,
there's
because you know there's going to be some idiot out there that's like his name is Darth Vader's brother.
Right.
You know,
absolutely.
You're gonna be like, I'm blocking this guy.
And also, I think an interesting element is how does, you know, I kind of talk about MMOs.
I like a lot of elements, don't you?
Warhammer was an MMO that brought some really serious PvP aspects to the world of MMOs, and they did it really well. And I feel like that they really could do some special things with Tor if they do PvP correctly, especially world PvP. World of Warcraft didn't do world PvP very well, let's be honest. You know, they did it instanced, but they didn't do world PvP very well at all. And in fact, you know, a percentage of their servers you can't even do world PvP. It's not even allowed in most areas. So if you play on a PvE server or an RPG server, or so on and so forth. So the idea is, what about these companion characters? Not only what is the PvP like, but are the companion characters active in PvP? If world PvP is allowed, are they going to have separate servers to where some allow world PvP and some don't, or are they going to, you know, base a lot of some of the content off of this Jedi versus Sith war and really allow for some server to server differences to where, you know, maybe this planet is overrun by Sith on this server, but on another server the Jedi have kind of overrun this, and they're allowed to customize it based on maybe your guild or you know whatever happens. And
I know with, like, I was watching one video and they were on Tatooine. I think it was the Bounty Hunter or something like that they were showing off, and they did say that I'm pretty sure Tatooine itself is going to be kind of a neutral ground. So, you know, if you go to Tatooine to do quests and whatnot there, you know, if you run across, you know, if you're a Jedi, you run across a Sith, you guys can just start fighting right then. I mean, I figure from the way it sounds of how they're going to do some of the world PvP kind of aspects of it, is that, you know, maybe this world, maybe Korriban, you know, a Sith planet is going to be kind of going back to like World of Warcraft, because that's, like, you know, the main MMO.
Much the way they did each kind of state.
Yeah, you have different zones and whatnot that are, you know, this is the Horde zone, this is the Alliance zone,
right.
This is a neutral territory. So if you're in the neutral territory, you can just, you know, fight each other as you wish. But if you go to Korriban, you know, and you're a Jedi, you know, probably a lot of Sith are going to be there. You're probably going to die. I know how it was in World of Warcraft. If you went to, if you were an Alliance and you went to a Horde territory, you couldn't attack any Horde people. But they could attack you if they wanted to.
Right, and those only lasted up to some, like, you know, lower mid levels, and anything beyond that, it was all neutral territory.
Yeah.
But in the lower levels, you were restrained to, you know, say Jedi specific or Sith specific territory, so you were safe until you started venturing out into some of the others, and so.
Which helped you from being, you know, just killed by a high level and slowing down your quests. And
frustrated with the game and quitting before you even got to really know it. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
so.
It definitely helped.
I was thinking maybe, like, you know, when you go and you confront other PCs and instead of your NPCs coming along, I think maybe story-wise, like, they could stay back in your ship, saying something like, all right, you guys stay here, I gotta go do this, like a mission. And that's another thing that, you know, like the ship in general. I think the ship, like space travel, it's, you know, I think that's like one of the coolest things.
Yeah.
Is being able to have your own starship, customizing it, having your crew, like your characters, your companion characters, and your starship with you. It just reminds me of just good old memories, like in the movies when you're when you're like specifically episode 4. Okay, I feel a lot there, and maybe a little bit in 5, and in episode 1 on the way to Mount.
Well, it's kind of like it's like in 5 when they get on the asteroid and they keep 3PO in the ship, and everybody else goes out to find out what's going on in this cave,
Yeah. So that's what I'm thinking. Like the NPCs stay there, and you go out and you do this.
I mean, what we do know is we know that you can at least have one companion character with you at all times. I mean, in KOTOR you could have 2,
Yeah.
But all I've seen so far is you can just have one companion character. But the big change from KOTOR to this is that you can change your companion character at any time. You don't have to go back to your ship to do it.
Right.
Which is very fun because there are times in KOTOR when I'm playing, I'm like, man, I could really use mission right now.
Yeah, I've had.
But I don't want to go all the way back there and get her.
Yeah.
So now you have the ability to just switch them out.
I've had that problem. Really been playing through it recently, where I want to take the Jedis with me, just because we have the force powers that we can use, or Canderous because he's a really good fighter. Yeah. But then I get to a point where there's a locked door or a computer. Like, man, I wish I had my droid right now. He could get through this no problem. And
it'll be nice to not have to deal with that.
It's one of those things like in Final Fantasy, you see there's people in your party. Like, are those people in the party those are the ones they let you use, and is it unspoken to everyone else that's there with you?
What do you mean?
I mean, you go to your menu and you see your character, and you see 2 other characters, or you have your 2 other characters, your companion characters in your party. Okay, and is this again? And that's what you see on the game screen, and when you battle, that's what it's like. Okay, but sometimes there's it's unspoken that these other characters are traveling there with you. You just can't see them. You know what I'm saying, Michael?
Right, when you're in the world map, you're just one character walking around, and the other one's
they're there.
When you walk up to have a conversation, they kind of fold out of your one character. I don't think in an advanced MMO this much, they would definitely be visibly traveling with you, and then there would probably be some way to almost port. For instance, for example, World of Warcraft. Okay, say you're a hunter and you have a pet, and you can have 6 pets and you're keeping them all in a stable. But you have one pet and you can put them back in the stable and get the other pet out. But it was almost be like that, only a way of switching pets in and out without having to walk to a stable.
That's what I'm saying. They have done that. Is it because you can switch them out any times because they're always there?
From what I saw in the Tatooine, that one video we saw the other day, it started out with just the bounty hunter. And then it seems like they brought out their companion. It
was almost like a whistle, and they just kind of appeared.
And then whenever he got on the speeder, it went away.
I would say it's similar to the way in, for instance, Ocarina of Time, you kind of call Epona, and she just happens to be wherever you are.
She's kind of
right. So I don't know. Another interesting aspect you guys brought up is the ship. Okay, so the ship acts in Star Wars almost as the home system, and a lot of other MMOs have acted, so it's fully customizable supposedly. So say Lord of the Rings, there's a housing system where a lot of people have really taken to that, and you can spend all this money you get in the game to buy and fully upgrade your ship and do this and do that, which is really unique.
And it also serves as a way of getting from one world to another.
Right, absolutely.
And space combat.
And they're around space combat.
Space combat. How are they going to do that?
I don't know.
I mean, I've read things people said they've seen it and it reminds them it's kind of on rail. It's on railsy. Starfox, it wasn't on rails, but you can move within those rails.
Right.
And then every once in a while you could open.
Which makes sense if you're going from planet to planet.
Yeah.
And that excites me. If it's just if it's as simple as that, I think that's cool.
Well, yeah.
The small video I saw, it looked almost like Star Wars Battlefront 2's. It just I don't know if it was on rails, but you had a small section that you could only fly in. But the way they were flying it around, it looked, like I was controlling on Battlefront 2 my A-wing, whatever, and just flying it around and shooting stuff.
It makes sense. If you're visiting a planet that's blockaded, you guys run the blockade. You don't just appear there. It wouldn't make much sense if you go into an Imperial occupied world and you're a Republic soldier. It makes more sense that you have to run that blockade to get there.
Right. It'd be interesting to talk to some people that have extensive experience with Star Wars Galaxies. To see kind of
my brother, man.
I played it for 3 weeks.
How they had tackled some issues.
My brother, he played. He said he loved it, and everyone loved it. He said, because I was looking up, I actually won a lot of awards initially, but then they dumbed the game down at one point by making like I guess really easy to become a Jedi.
Well, I mean,
my brother, because he sold his character on like on eBay for like $400.
It was highly touted at one point that Star Wars Galaxy was one of the most, from what I understand, difficult to level games. Like it just took so, and people talk about Warcraft. They say, the classic Warcraft 1 to 60. They're like, well, it took forever. Well, people coming from games like Star Wars Galaxy were like, you have no idea what forever means. Like it took.
The main problem with that game is they picked the wrong era.
Right.
I mean, they picked an era where there are no Jedi, there are no Sith.
What era did they choose?
They chose between 3 and 4, with the Empire having just it's like right before 4, I think.
Okay.
So
almost like the Force Unleashed time period.
Yeah, but I mean, there's only 2 Sith and there's no Jedi. There's supposed to be just 2 Jedi left, Yoda and Obi-Wan. But
so
you got hundreds of Jedi running around, on Tatooine, where they can all kill Luke at any time and ruin the story. I'm just saying, they are tied to. You can't have the rebellion loose. You can't have the Empire be destroyed in this thing.
Right.
And in this MMO, anything could happen in Tor, but in Star Wars Galaxies, there's a status quo you have to follow.
Right. Definitely. Just so my kind of train of thought with the whole MMO world was there are so many things that an MMO has built into it up to this point before Tor. So there's all these characteristics that an MMO has that, say for instance, the class characteristics. So you have a healer specific class, a tank specific class, a melee and range damage specific classes, just all these different things, and Tor seems to be kind of changing that, and that's interesting. At the same time, you talk about making a successful MMO, and we talked a little bit about this earlier, and especially my question to the guys that are so familiar with the lore would be, at what point can you balance that? Can you balance making an MMO with the mechanics that an MMO needs to have to be successful, versus kind of loosening the lore? So for instance, just an example of what I'm talking about, you have the Jedi Knights and the Jedi Consulars. At what point do you make, this guy's a healer or this guy's a tank, and how does the fact that he's a healer, he's a tank, or he just does damage? Because let's be honest, a Jedi can kind of do all things, but in the spirit of video games, you choose points to be, talent trees or whatever they're going to use to be more specifically geared towards healing, or geared towards tanking, or geared towards doing melee DPS. So how much would you like to see them be very true to lore and not play with too many things, but still?
I'll make the example of even in the books that take place after Return of the Jedi, there is a character in the Luke's Jedi Academy called Koran Horn, and he's one of Luke's original 12 students. And the thing about him and his dad and his grandfather, they're called the Halkrans. They're from Corellia, and they are very, very good at mind tricks, but they are terrible at telekinesis. It's just something that they are, they do. I mean, they he can't, they talk about, in the book, I can't lift this pebble, but I can control those ants to move that pebble, So, I think that is kind of an example of, I'm not very, because there's Jedi healers in those books, there's one monk Mallory, the fish head guys, that's a Jedi healer. That's all she does. She has a lightsaber and all that stuff too, but she's not very good with it. So I think that kind of fits within Star Wars lore. It's just you're gonna have people complain that they're not as good with
right.
With something. I'm a Jedi. I should be able to do anything I want. But
right.
It's all about how you play the game.
What Eric's kind of talking about is anybody that's played a lot of MMOs. We'll use World of Warcraft for an example, just because it is the most widely played MMO. That for instance, in classic WoW, it was very class specific things going on. So a paladin and a shaman were very support oriented, and doing buffs and throwing out some short heals, and the priest was the best healer you had. A warrior was basically the only viable tank you could have, and the rest of the classes just kind of filled in, and a mage was your burst high DPS burst damage, and your rogue was your sustained melee damage. And so then you talk about as you go on, that worked well, but as they went on, you had people complaining and complaining, and so they started nerfing classes and boosting classes and fixing classes and adjusting it, and it was just a never-ending cycle of people complaining that their class didn't do enough damage, or this class was doing this. And so you had a situation where all of a sudden paladins were the best tanks, or paladins were the best healers, or the best damage was was something random, like a warrior wielding two-handed weapons was all of a sudden the highest damage. And so it's just an interesting aspect to where these things evolve over time, and Tor has specifically stated they'd like to be able to do away with this whole waiting around specifically for a healer for a group, or waiting around for a tank for a group, by allowing each class to kind of do everything simultaneously. So when you do that, do you take away from a lot of the things people love about class-specific MMOs, and do you end up with this long list of people complaining constantly, and how does BioWare react to that? Do they cave in and buff classes and nerf classes constantly, or do they keep their ground?
I mean, I don't know anything. I really don't know anything about how MMOs work, but I can only assume, just from the knowledge I have about it, is if everybody can do everything, then some people can do this one thing really good. Like a Jedi Consular can heal a lot better than a Jedi Guardian, even though they both can do it. So I don't know. I mean, there's like dichotomy of, do you want do you want to please everybody, or do you want to keep your standards to what your classes are? So I'm hoping BioWare. I mean, I've played a few of their games. I've loved all their games I've played. I know I'll love our Mass Effect whenever it happens, whenever I finally get to that. But I trust them to make the right decisions, and they have the advantage of coming out now, and they've seen all the mistakes everybody else has made. So
I just hope EA, which seems to be like they're financially backing it, and they're kind of like, I hope they don't have like BioWare on the leash, and they force them to make bad decisions based on business.
And a lot of people would tell you that when Warhammer first came out, Mythic was its developer, and it developed it forever, and before its release, EA bought Mythic and became EA Mythic. And a lot of people will tell you that possibly some mistakes were made by EA, kind of taking over and running things this way or that way. And I think BioWare's influence may be a lot larger than, say, Mythic's was at the time.
You would think. And not to say, EA, they're a good business. They put out so many good games. They make a lot of money. And they don't make a lot of money just because they're selfish. They make a lot of money because they make good decisions.
Right.
You know what I mean? So
sometimes.
Sometimes. Yeah.
But okay, so I think something we brought up earlier is the idea that this Star Wars MMO is bringing a lot of Star Wars fans to the MMO world, but it's also bringing a lot of MMO fans and a lot of MMO enthusiasts to the Star Wars world as well, and that's going to be an awesome mixture. But you think about it, and games that came out after World of Warcraft has kind of established its reign haven't been that successful for a multitude of reasons. But there's been some quality MMOs that have come out that just haven't been able to get themselves off the ground because their constituency of players hasn't been large enough. They haven't drawn enough players away from, say, World of Warcraft or Lord of the Rings Online to establish a fan base. And there's been very few MMOs that have been able to coexist with World of Warcraft. And so it's interesting to think that, Star Wars very well, because a lot of people with World of Warcraft, I think a lot of players they quit and they go back, and they quit and they go back, that they're looking for something new, looking for something exciting. And it's a ripe time for people to come in. And I think with a name like Star Wars, because you have such a large fan base, you can lift an MMO off the ground and establish a fan base to where you definitely have the recipe for a successful MMO. Whereas, you know, a lesser known name might not be able to do that. But with a well-known name like Star Wars, you get all the lore with it as well, and so you also get the restraints of that lore. Luckily for BioWare, like you said, they found this period in time where they can kind of shred off the restraints a little, but at the same time, you still have the kind of restraints of the world that are always going to be there. You know, a Jedi is a Jedi is a Jedi. A Sith is a Sith is a Sith. So, I just think it's really interesting to say, you know, Star Wars can be a successful MMO because it's Star Wars, but also because it's Star Wars, it's definitely going to change the way the MMO works. You know.
Yeah. I mean, you know, I would assume that this is the MMO that could take down WoW. I mean, is that what we're trying to say? I mean,
it definitely,
the WoW killer.
Yeah, I mean, in like, one way or the other, I don't think that you're ever going to. You're obviously never. WoW's going to exist.
Yeah.
WoW's going to be successful, but is something going to be able to coexist with it, or even establish a larger number of subscribers than WoW. I mean that would be a feat.
Things like, I mean, Star Wars, The Old Republic. It's so different. I mean, this is like a science fiction, okay? It's so different than like that, a fantasy MMO, a fantasy setting that like it could coexist because there's people who love sci-fi, and there's people who love Dragon Age, there's people who love Mass Effect. Okay, there's people like me who just love, I like good stories. I like good games. I'll play both. Okay, and there's those people. Like there's people who always stick with WoW because they prefer fantasy. There's people who stick with, who go to Star Wars just because they like Star Wars. They like science fiction. And then there's people in the middle who go back and forth and play out both of them.
Right, but I mean, I think the idea what we're talking about is to play 2 MMOs at one point in time. You can't. I don't think you can argue with the fact that you can't get enough, like as much as you would probably want in an MMO playing more than one at one time. You could switch back and forth between the two maybe, but you're not going to get the content you want because you just don't. There's not enough time in the day, and unless of course you don't have a job. And
I think it's like I think it could be compared to like social media. Like MySpace was the biggest thing back in the day, and Facebook came along, and then MySpace just slowly grew down to the point where
not for me, man.
It's
not
like
for me.
It's like you still use MySpace. What do you?
MySpace, like, whatever.
Right, and
I'll tell you one thing.
Now Facebook. Now Facebook.
You have a high school football game too.
Yeah. You have Twitter and Google Plus.
Yeah, and you got all these things.
And all these things
Google
are
Plus.
attempting to coexist. And
I'll tell you what though. I think there's a lot of people who play WoW because it's one of the best MMOs. I mean, a lot. Like you told me, Michael. There's a time when you told me that you thought Warhammer was better. It won't be more successful because of like the cult following of WoW.
Here's the thing that happens though, like a game like Warhammer brings these new ideas to the MMO world and they introduce them all, but because they can't get enough fan base, WoW plays the game. The developers of WoW play the game, take all their ideas, and 6 months later, everything that Warhammer brought to the world of MMOs is now integrated into Warcraft. And the game you spent 60 days on a character playing, you now have all these new features that Warhammer introduced to the MMO world integrated into World of Warcraft, and so they all of a sudden win all the players back. And the problem with Warhammer was they had what they thought would be an adequate number of servers, and that was fine at first, and all the servers were filling up, and all of a sudden a couple months later they have to condense all the servers because the populations are waning to keep a high enough population on each server to have PvP and to have because Warhammer was specifically needs a high population for each server for the PvP to be fun, because you have to have people constantly fighting to take over these different lands, and you have to have enough people to go run these instances together and run these raid groups. And so having to throw servers together and apart was just it's a tough thing to do as an MMO company.
Yeah.
That's the one thing Tor is really going to have to work for, is they have to impress so many different people right off the bat, because some people will never played an MMO are going to get on this. If they don't like it, they're just going to stop, and they're not going to keep paying for something they don't like.
Yeah, they're not going to understand.
But then they have to also please people that have played MMOs for the last 10 years. Like if I played MMOs the last 10 years, I started playing Tor, and they made me learn how to play an MMO, I'd probably get kind of bored with it. So they kind of gotta. You gotta be able to please such a large group of people. When you do that, you always lose some stragglers. So we'll see. you know. But you know, it's also once again it's BioWare. I'm sure they know what they're doing.
Like they make you think it's going to be different enough, really. It's going to be its own thing because that fourth pillar of the story, like it's going to be such an integral part of what makes Tor like different.
Yeah, and
it's never been done before in a good way.
I don't know.
I know you don't know.
I doubt the differences. I mean, I think it's going to be different, but at the same time, I think it's going to be.
Jeez, Eric.
It's going to be more of the same. It's going to be different, but it's going to be more of the same, just in a different way. I think. I don't know. I think a lot of the things they're doing have been introduced in other MMOs, and they're just trying to take it to the next level.
Yeah.
From what I've seen, there's definitely originality, but there's not like to the point where it's still not, you know, your typical MMO in a way. I don't know. It's kind of walking that line of originality versus using what's worked, which isn't a bad thing. They're definitely taking what's worked in the past.
Kind of a safe way.
Yeah.
Like I read things like, I mean, like I don't know enough about other MMOs, but I've read polarizing, articles on the quality of the game. But I mean, a lot of stuff seems consistent. Amongst people who like what they played and people who haven't liked what they played is like, the game seems like a typical MMO, but it's in a Star Wars universe, and and there's consequence in their story. Like and like what this article was specifically talking about, the one I'm quoting now is okay. The journalist was playing a character, and you get to a point where you play with other people, and you're trying to make a decision. You all have to make a decision together. Okay, and he thought that was really cool. I think that's really cool too. And the way that works, isn't it? Like the person.
Well, what it does is you automatically roll a random number. Whoever has the highest number makes that decision for the group.
Okay, you figure like the higher level person will make the decision. Yeah,
I don't know how it works.
See, I don't think that if the higher level one makes the decision, then he makes the decision every time. I mean, it seems more randomized. What I see, like you have 4 choices you can make on a said question or whatever, and you make your response. But it kind of intertwined between this person would say it, then this person would say it. So I'm sure it's gonna be some kind of dice roll where whoever gets the highest roll, gets to answer the question. Or something along those lines, instead of just the same person or the party leader giving all the answers.
Yeah, I just don't want to get in a situation where I'm with a group of people and some guys
jackass.
Let's just kill them all, And I'm like, no, they're Ewoks. I'm doing it. I can't help myself. My character has this mad smile on his face, and I get 50 dark side points. I don't want that to happen,
One thing that I did want to touch, it kind of mixes some of the topics we've been talking about just recently. Is kind of the lore versus some of the upgrades aspects, and it's a way that we were talking about how to keep people who maybe don't play MMOs or even that do play MMOs to keep playing. I know when I first started playing World of Warcraft, I didn't start till Lich King came out, which that's the second expansion that they had come out of it, and I would go into a big in a Stormwind in the capital and see all these guys with crazy gear, these awesome helmets, awesome shields, awesome swords.
Right. Very aesthetically pleasing, kind of epic looking, world breaking, weapons or gear.
Yeah, it would just some of it would just be oh my gosh, I gotta level up. I gotta get that. I gotta get that stuff. It's
I gotta get me one of those.
Yeah, exactly. There were mounts. There were all this stuff. Now from an MMO aspect, going into Star Wars. There's only so many things you can do with a lightsaber. Something. Do you think?
And for someone who won the international choreography contest,
I don't mean fighting wise, Shane. I mean, you can't make a lightsaber look like the Frostmourne. Just different weapons that you can see from a sword, what you can do with a sword or a shield.
The Buster sword.
Yeah, you can't make a Buster lightsaber sword.
I could.
And do you guys think that they can still do things? I mean, you can kind of expand a little bit more. I mean, there's lightsabers going to have. There's the armor. I mean, do you guys think there's still?
Well, I mean, and that's just with the the Force using characters, but you have your your normal lightsaber. Then you can upgrade the way it looks, just the hilt. You can modify it to have 2 blades coming out. You can have dual lightsabers. You can change the crystals that power the lightsabers so it gives certain properties. Changes the color. It's not going to be from a mile away. I can see that you have a freaking awesome lightsaber.
Yeah, I was going to say for someone to see.
But if I see a Sith Lord, if I'm a Jedi apprentice and I see a Sith Lord coming at me and he has scars all over his face and mechanical arms, and he's riding some giant horse reptile thing, and and I'm like, he has a sissy lightsaber. You know, I'm not gonna be thinking that. You know, what I'm saying? Like,
I was gonna say maybe each class will have something specific, so people within that class, like I'm a Sith, I'll see another Sith. Like the Siths, like the thing that they customize and that's really like flashy is like this thing. Okay, but like it maybe like obviously I think a bounty hunter would be easy. You know what I mean?
Well, you talk about blasters and all the things you can do. Blasters, all the things you can do with like an armor suit or
there's only like all the characters are different, so there's specific things. So like if I'm a smuggler, I'm gonna want what that smuggler has because it's awesome.
Yeah, it's smugglers. They're not gonna be like, look how intimidating I am. They're gonna be, it's kind of like a smug thing. Like, look how good I look.
Right.
With the troopers, this is gonna be like, look how I could destroy you by you looking at me. That's how awesome I look. Like I think the same thing you can say with the Sith, especially like the ones that paint their faces and they're gonna have all these weird looking robes. That that'll work. I think the only problem you're gonna run into is when it comes to Jedi, because story wise, Jedi aren't supposed to have a whole lot of possessions.
They're very humble.
And they're very humble, but they are in a war, and when Jedi are in war, they wear armor. So you will have armor. It'll be under under your cloak and that kind of stuff. So I don't know. I mean, I'd be interested to see what they do. I mean, that all comes to a design point of view.
Right. I think going back to something we talked about earlier is it goes to a graphics point of view. Specifically, World of Warcraft's advantage they have is they don't necessarily have to be realistic people-looking graphics. You can have we talked about how simplistic the graphics were, so you can have almost like a cartoony-looking, absurd large sword or a large bludgeon or an absurdly large gun. But when it comes to Star Wars, you want to remain true to, what a lightsaber looks like or what a blaster looks like. So you can't have something absurd and unrealistic, but you want to get creative with it as well. So it'll be interesting to see how they try to make things aesthetically pleasing while still, remaining semi-realistic to where you would believe it to be able to exist inside the world of Star Wars.
I know that I've heard they've said about customizing ships and whatnot, so I'm glad they're going to do that.
Yeah.
Because I would hate, from what I was looking on their website, a Jedi is going to get this starting companion and then this like starting ship. Well, I don't know if you can get another ship after that, or if you can just customize your ship how you want.
I think they said that you customize. Everybody has the same ship, but you customize it.
Okay, because
you can give different paint jobs. And
I just don't want to be like flying. Me, Shane, Eric, Michael. We're all flying. We're all on the exact same like looking ship, all flying next to each other. You know, I mean, it's kind of okay, but I want to be able to stand out a little bit and have something else. I don't want to be.
And what I wonder is like, can I go in your ship for a while? You know what I mean? And we go off into a mission together.
It is a question. I just realized that I hadn't read up on this. Can one of you guys talk a little about the different playable races? Have they talked about that or?
What's the even race? Skin color, Michael.
They've talked about how some races you can only be some races for some classes. Like you can be. I
have a list of all the races right here. If you want to go through them real quick. And make sure Eric, if I pronounce them wrong correctly.
And make sure you say which one goes with what class.
Well, see, I don't know exactly all of which ones they are. I know there's the human, of course.
Human.
the Chiss.
Chiss, yeah. The Chiss is the Grand Admiral Thrawn. It's a very popular species in the EU.
Okay. There's the Miraluka.
Yep.
There's the Mirilan.
Yeah, they're pretty much just humanoids. The Miraluka can't see, so they have cloth over their eyes. What's the second one you said?
Which one, the Miraluka or the Chiss?
The second.
Why do they have that cloth over their eyes?
Because they have no eyes.
Doesn't mean they have
Miralan? Mirialan.
Yeah, it's just it's like you have green skin with tattoos on your face. That's pretty much what it is. You're a human.
Of course, there's the Sith Pure Blood. There's gonna be Twi'leks, Zabreks, and also Ratataki.
Ratataki is that's the Saz Ventress's race, which is also humanoid.
Yeah, I mean they're all gonna be humanoids. They also said that I know humans can be any of the classes. Which of the classes there's a Jedi Knight, there is the Jedi Counselor, Smuggler, and Trooper, and that's all for like the light side of it. And on the dark side you have Bounty Hunters. There's Imperial Agents, and then Sith Warriors and Sith Inquisitors. And then each of them are going to have like two kind of directions they can go for each class.
Yeah.
obviously they'll add more classes over time. But one thing that kind of slightly disappointed me a little bit is like I know that there'll be in the universe there'll be companion characters, but I kind of thought it'd be cool to be a Wookiee or a Jawa. Like Final Fantasy 14, I can't say much about the quality of the gameplay mechanics.
Well,
I mean, you can be. I was watching Gus Lundemoog play, and he had this little Moogle running beside him who was like went up to his shin, and that was some guy playing. Like that's pretty sweet.
Problem with
like
that is
I could be a Jawa and like run around with Eric, and he's being like a smuggler.
I think the problem with that is like if you're a Wookiee, it's not going to make much sense whenever you're because it's fully voiced when you're not speaking Wookiee. Whenever you're talking to all your companion characters and all that stuff.
Right, absolutely. And there's something, that's something they might be able to do, new playable races and,
I figured they would.
And classes and expansions and stuff.
I mean, Chewbacca could talk. A lot of people can understand Wookiees. You know what I mean?
No, not a lot.
Well, I can't.
I think
I know playing through KOTOR right now, there's some people that have no idea, like there's the Zerg Corporation, and they don't understand the Wookiees at all. Yeah. Luckily, my character just happens to, so that's lucky for me, I guess.
For his character and his story, he like if you're playing a Wookiee for his story, they would be able to understand it.
I think
like it was just like
just everyone you happen to run into that you haven't run into otherwise.
If you like playing as Chewbacca in 4, 5, and 6, like
I think what they're trying to do is they're trying to keep it as close to humanoid as possible, so that their face customization will go over everybody.
Yeah.
Right.
Because Chiss is like that just blue skin, red eyes, but you can still change, the way you look.
I would like to have been like Kiadi Mundi, his race.
Caldor.
Yeah, with a big cone head or a couple things like that. But I don't know. I want to see more.
It'd be awesome to be, a Rhodian or a Bothan. Or
that's what I think about.
I know Gus.
And you could do that in Galaxy, actually. Galaxies.
Our friend Gus said that one of his favorite things was making a gnome in World of Warcraft and being a warrior. And being like this tiny little guy tanking this giant monster, and you're just taking all these hits, and it was just funny. Like
getting
he was like
punted across the room.
Yeah, he was like,
by the beast, BRS.
But they haven't fleshed out exactly all of the playable races yet, have they?
They could still have more that they just haven't. I know I watched a video that came out not too long ago that said, they've announced this and that, but they're still not giving out all of their cards yet. They still have stuff hidden in their hand.
I've heard a lot of people talk, throw some questions around about crafting. So can you guys speak into the? I know that I've heard there's a passive crafting system based on the crew. And
just creating items.
So crafting is very important in a lot of MMOs because not only do you have your class, again using Warcraft as an example, you can pick 2 different main professions, and there's side professions and main professions. So side professions, say like in World of Warcraft, are first aid, cooking, for example, and fishing, and so you can level all those up, and a lot of those can affect your gameplay, and you can have some pretty cool stuff with that. Whereas with say the main professions, you can pick a lot of things like gathering professions or leatherworking professions or jewel crafting professions, and so all these different things affect the kind of things. So you don't have to find everything, you don't have to discover things via quest reward or via loot. You can also make them from some of the simple things you gather throughout your world, and so crafting in MMOs has always been a very intricate and important part of the game. So it'd be just interesting to see. I think Aaron's got something.
As far as crafting, I know the only thing I found on that was relating to companions and whatnot. But it is going to have a passive form of crafting. It's going to be known as crew skills. But what you can do actually is with your companions, you can have them carry out gathering and crafting different tasks while you're out and adventuring in the world. And it does say that players can assign up to 5 companions to perform various skills, and the crafting skills will allow players and companions to create different various items.
So you can have up to 5 companions.
Apparently, you can have at least 5. You can't have them all at the same time, but apparently you can. At least according to this one.
On your ship.
You can have at least 5 on your ship, and while you're out on the world and doing different things, you'll be able to find, you can have, have your Wookiee friend and your Jawa friend and your droid or whatever, all go out and help gather different material and whatnot to make items. And you can, I know, playing KOTOR, I can talk to, T3, T3, I need a computer spike. He'd be like, all right, and just pop one out and give me that. And then, my Wookiee can make me grenades and whatnot. So I figuring it's going to be somewhat kind of similar to that, to where they'll help get you items and help make you items and whatnot. Well, I don't know to what extent they'll do that, because besides just in World of Warcraft, you can you could buy, you know, bows and arrows and whatnot, and you know that was just, you know, some stuff. But you could also make other ones that could be better. You know, there was leather working where, you know, you could go and buy leather armor, but if you were a leather worker, you could make your own leather armor and then enchant it and, you know, whatever else depending on your profession.
What classes do you guys think are for yourself the most appealing? Because I know for me, I feel like first I just, even if I didn't want to be, but I do. I want to be a Jedi. Okay, but like a class that seems just really interesting to me is being a smuggler. Like I really want to be a smuggler. I'm gonna be a Jedi first, but I definitely can't wait to be a smuggler. I'm gonna be them all, but those two definitely first. Like I think they sound really cool. Like Aaron, I think you mentioned something about I don't know, the sneakiest one of them all.
Well, two of my favorites that I've been watching was, like, I really liked the smuggler and some of the aspects he had, and then I also really liked the Imperial Agent. They both seem like more of the sneakier kind of classes, almost like rogue-like, where like the Imperial Agent can actually like turn invisible and do different cool things. I playing like World of Warcraft and playing Guild Wars number ones, I've always preferred more of a range kind of person. So I mean, I really want to be a Jedi, and I like being a Jedi in KOTOR, but in an MMO standpoint, I'll probably end up choosing. I mean, I know tons of people are going to be Jedis and whatnot. So I mean, depending, I want to balance out my party and whatnot to make sure we're all kind of even and having classes fulfilled that we need to. But I'll probably prefer a range kind of person for the most part.
As far as I've gone, like Bounty Hunter's always been kind of my favorite character. Boba Fett was always my favorite character in episodes 4, 5, and 6. So it'll be interesting. I'll kind of be interested to do that. But at the same time, based on MMO aspects, I've kind of always been the healer of the group just because no one else wants to do it, and that's not always true. I've definitely had some friends that have took the bullet and done the healing route for a while, but I definitely enjoy healing. So I might try to find the class that's most oriented towards healing and do that to start off with. And to be honest with you, when I do damage, I love casting, but you give me a sword and let me go at something and I don't know, puts a smile on my face to be able and see those big numbers popping, you know, rolling off from your damage combat text. So seeing those big numbers roll off always puts a big smile on your face. So I think that
I just like the way you describe it. It puts a big smile on my face. You know what I mean? And you got a big smile on your face now.
I love it. But yeah, so I'm definitely excited to maybe play with say like a Sith warrior or a Jedi Knight and just
like for us,
melt
like,
somebody's face with a lightsaber.
We're all gonna play the game together, okay? You know, at least we better. Unless Aaron puts it out on us.
I'm gonna have it before all you guys are. I'm gonna have it installed and playing, be leveled maxed out before you guys get to level 3 or whatever.
That's silly. Don't do that. That's boring.
You'll be halfway through Mass Effect 1 when we're starting.
That's a good way to lose friends. Trust me, I did that. If you ask me my friends when the Burning Crusade came out, I played it day and night, and I was like 10 levels ahead of them, and they all wanted to quit because they were frustrated because they kept trying to level up to me, and I always out leveled them, and it was just no fun for them.
Yeah, we gotta watch out for that because Gus will do that.
He will.
But yeah, my plan now.
I really hope we all, like, for at least the most part, can get a group together. We can all stay the similar level and kind of move up together and do. You know, I want to hit all the instances, all the raids. You know, I want to hit everything. Like, this is the first MMO I probably started playing when it came out.
Yeah.
You know, World of Warcraft I was late on. Guild Wars I started playing after it had been out for years. You know, so this is the first one that, you know, day launch. You know, number 1 I will have it. I'll be, you know, trying to play it. You know, bugs. You know, whatever.
Right. Well, I mean, they say the first few months of MMO is extended beta, and I mean that's kind of the running joke, but it's true.
I'm expecting lag. I'm expecting, you know, problems with, you know, galore through it. But I mean, I expect to have it day 1, and, you know, I'm gonna go through those and, you know, bear with BioWare.
Hopefully, there's no server queues. That could be disastrous.
Oh my
server queue?
So the population of a server can only, you know, for those of you who haven't played MMOs, a population. Each MMO breaks their worlds down into servers, so each player can play on a separate server, and the servers can only hold, you know, X amount of people on the server. So if, you know, the server can hold 10,000 people and 10,000 people are logged in, you'll be in the waiting list to enter the server. So you'll sit there and wait, and so each MMO that comes out has these issues because they have to anticipate how many people are going to be playing and create that many servers, and then maybe people will overcreate, you know, a number of characters. You know, there'll be an overpopulation on one server, and so they have to kind of coerce people to switch servers and and people will take their whole guilds and move servers if they give them free transfers. And so it'll be an interesting thing. I mean, it'll just be interesting to see Star Wars in general. Or for instance, okay, so how are they going to do economy? Because each server will have its own economy, but have they mentioned like auction houses, or have they mentioned like I know you were saying Blizzard's doing crazy things with Diablo. They're actually allowing people to buy things not only for in-game money but for real money, and Blizzard's taking a cut of that. And it's just each server in each game to be successful has to have a way of developing commerce, in game, and that's just how the MMO works. And it'll be interesting to see how the money system works and how the economy in each server breaks itself down, and whether that'll be successful or not.
I'm sure they will have an auction house. I haven't seen anything specifically on it yet, but I'm sure one will exist. And I haven't really seen much on the economy at all, really, of anything I've been reading on anything. Not yet, anyway. But I guarantee they'll have one.
Right. I mean, it's a kind of a given. But I think another thing that I wanted to bring to the table was, especially for a lot of people who have been playing Warcraft for a long time, specifically just to throw the background information out there, I started playing about 5-6 months into the game's creation, and I played for a little bit of time, and since then I've been on and off for years. I think that was like my sophomore, junior year of high school. I don't remember, it's been so long, but it's just ridiculous. Just the on and off time I spent, and being able to see the progression of WoW. You see how it began geared towards more hardcore gamers, and an example I used earlier was, when you did a quest, it gave you the quest text, and you had to read through the quest text, and you would have to go out and try to figure out what it was saying and how to do what it was doing. And if you had a problem, you could throw in your question and Thoughtbot, and then obviously years later when Wowhead became popular, Wowhead was another source you could go to get help on what to do and where to get this and what to do with that. And so there's definitely a balance or for instance, Flight Pass, they used to not have connecting Flight Pass in Warcraft, so you had to sit there and wait for your guy to land and then click another flight path and go from one point to another point and then wait. Or there only used to be one auction house for each faction, so the Horde had one auction house, the Alliance had one auction house, and that's expanded. So there's been a lot of upgrades in World of Warcraft for convenience reasons, and a lot of those things you could say arguably were good things. But a lot of those things, such as making leveling easier, or as soon as one raid's over and the next raid begins, making the last raid way easier, or nerfing a raid as people go, almost doesn't make it more convenient, but dumbs the game down, and nullifies it, if you will. And so it'll be interesting to see how BioWare approaches just in the beginning, how convenient things are. And as the game progresses and people start complaining about some of the more annoying things, whether they take some steps to make things more convenient, or if they take some steps to, like WoW did now, instead of having to read the quest, as soon as you pick up the quest, there's a little blip on your map and says, oh, you can just go walk right here and do this, and you don't even have to read the quest or know what you're doing or know what it's about.
Yeah.
So
I think actually when I started playing with Gus, I put that day, that's what it was like. It's like, so you just talk to people and do missions and come back and talk to them again, do more missions, and keep killing things and come back and fetching this and coming back.
Right.
And it just told me exactly where to go. You know what I mean?
Right, and there's a little blip on your map, exactly. And the thing is, I think Warcraft specifically has driven a lot of hardcore gamers and hardcore MMO enthusiasts away from the game because of what they've done with it. And obviously you don't want to see Star Wars have that happen, because without the MMO community, Star Wars can't exist. But without the Star Wars, fan base community that are new to MMOs, the game can't exist either. They're going to need both of them for the game to exist. So how much can they cater to both, and how are they going to balance that? That's going to be a very interesting dichotomy to see as the game develops.
See, at the same time, though, with that, like making the earlier levels almost to a sense, I want to say easier. They're making their end game more achievable by newer players. trying to get Shane to start playing an MMO. He might not sit there and try to get through the hard levels of 1 through 60 and then keep going to 70, 80, 85 if it was, as hard as it used to be. Making it more achievable, it makes it a little bit more
accessible, more fun, right?
It makes it
right. And it's as far as Blizzard go, it's all been a ploy to try to make money. It's all been it's try to get more subscribers, get more people to play, and you sacrifice as a Blizzard. They've sacrificed gameplay for money or subscribers or
getting those people to level 60 faster. Now they gotta buy BC, Burning Crusades. Now they gotta buy Lich King. Now they gotta buy Cataclysm.
So you wonder and you really hope that that's not the case, but at the same time, that's the world we live in. So it's definitely something that you hope gets balanced and gets balanced well.
Well, I think we've covered most of our topics. With everything we covered, pretty much, no matter what they do, this game coming out is gonna kind of change MMOs one way or another.
Absolutely, whether it be they do it and do it wrong, and other MMOs that come in after it take some of the things they did right and add that to their game, or whether they do it right and all of a sudden they're the leader in the industry and everything they do is pioneering the genre of MMO and affecting where it goes from here. And now all of a sudden BioWare, is the leader of the MMO industry. And okay, so what does Blizzard do to come back at them? Do they release a new game? Do they force Blizzard to release a World of StarCraft, or you know what I mean? or do they go a completely opposite direction? So it'll be really interesting, and I think this is going to be, regardless of flop or success, it's going to be a changing point not only in the MMO world, but the changes they're talking about making, a changing point in the video game industry, and where video games go from here. Do we start heading towards more MMOs with all kinds of different big names, say Star Wars, or we talked about like a Pokemon MMO that could possibly be really successful. Just anything like that. Do people start heading towards more MMO based games, or do we stay towards just the basic one player role playing game? So it'll be super interesting, and I think that you definitely can't deny the fact that this could be genre changing, and the things we as MMO fans would like to see is server specific things happening that if you play on this server the game changes and it might be different than if you play on a different server, and just some wild thoughts that we never thought possible that I think BioWare is trying to make leaps and bounds towards the future of gaming. So
I'm excited.
I can't wait for the game. Shane, Eric, you guys have any closing things to say or anything regarding?
I think we should just go around and say our favorite color.
Our favorite color?
Yeah.
Green.
Mine's green.
No, I said it first.
Mine's green. Mine's green. You guys can't all have
Mine's
green.
not green.
I thought yours was pink.
I just chose it because I know it's your two favorites.
Green's been my favorite color
We're
forever.
We're not really doing this.
What is
Go
your
around.
Eric, what is your favorite
That's what
color?
my lightsaber is going to be. My lightsaber will be green. I will make it green. It's got
What
to
is your favorite color, Eric? I don't know. Red?
Yeah.
Yeah, Gus says
Alright,
he doesn't have a favorite color, but he always chooses red.
All
Alright, so
That's
any
awesome.
closing thing on Old Republic or anything you guys got?
I'm just excited to craft for it. I'm gonna go get it at midnight.
Alright.
I think it's gonna have problems, but I'm just gonna keep sticking with it. Keep paying BioWare. Keep giving them all my money. That way they fix the things I don't like.
Out of the 8 classes, what's the first class you want to be?
Jedi.
Eric, any closing things for you to say?
Just that I'm both excited and scared of this game coming out. Excited because I get to play a new Star Wars MMO. Scared because I already waste so much time. Anyway, I'm going to be wasting even more time doing this. But and then class-wise, I'm not really sure. I'm just, I want to be able to play with you guys, but I also want to be able to, have my character that I play with.
What's like the number one class that you personally would like? Like, not regarding anyone else or anything. Like, if you just chose your favorite class to just play, who would it be? The Sith? Would it be on the Jedi?
I think I have to start out the Jedi first, just because it seems like with any kind of Star Wars game, I always play a Jedi light side first, and then I go off and I do something else. I'll play the dark side, and then I'll play, but there's 8, I'm like, I gotta play them all. It doesn't matter what order they're in. I gotta do them all anyway,
One thing I do wonder with you saying that, like, I know you said before, all Star Wars games, good side as opposed to dark side is always the canon side.
Yeah.
So I wonder with like this tour game, if you play Sith and be dark, is that gonna matter? Is it still gonna all add up? I figured it's still all add up, but
yeah, I mean, you just gotta, they're pretty good about keeping things a little like, well, we're not really sure what's canon and what's not. So,
gotcha. Michael,
you can't also stuff affect.
I think you've
anything. So
you probably had most of your closing. I don't know if you had anything else left to toss in, whatever.
Favorite color?
I definitely, I'm excited for the game, and I hope more than anything that they make Blizzard up the ante by creating a new game instead of adding more to the same crap they've got to make it interesting. I'm more of a fantasy guy than I am a sci-fi guy, but I'm definitely picking up this game because I'm really excited about it. I'm really excited to play with my friends. Definitely skeptical, and I think that it's a bit of healthy skepticism. And I think you'll see me playing the devil's advocate more than anything, just because I want to definitely challenge people to try to challenge BioWare to create the best game possible, to try to challenge the standards to make it, not just be complacent with a game that says Star Wars and has decent gameplay, because I think it could be something that's like I said, industry changing. So I definitely think a healthy skepticism is in need for everybody. MMO and Star Wars enthusiasts alike. So I'm just excited. Definitely want to, like I said, want to play. I think a consular, do some healing. So I think that might be my first task. So we'll see what happens. But I'm excited.
All right, gotcha. I can't wait for the game. For one, like I've been wanting to get back into WoW, but now I've been really waiting on the Old Republic. And also, I'm really excited to see what they do with the space combat of the game.
Oh, definitely.
Just to see it in an MMO. If I can just fly around and fight other people in space. Just.
I just like Star Fox. I just do that the whole time.
Yeah. I just fly around the entire time and gain XP by destroying other people's ships and stuff. I mean, something crazy like that, just to see how it is.
I wonder if you're a smuggler, you're a better pilot than.
I heard you get a better ship.
Warrior
don't you get like an awesome ship, like the best ship?
I mean, I don't know if it's the best ship, but I mean, each one has their own ships and stuff. But
it looked like the coolest ship. I think I remember looking at it. It looked like it was the coolest ship.
I don't know.
It was really junky looking too.
And then regarding probably my class that I really want to be is probably going to be the smuggler. Just because after watching the last trailer, the smuggler just looks so cool in that last trailer. I just can't imagine doing just being that awesome like that, like his slow motion spin
being awesome either.
And his shots and stuff that he has, and just he was being arrested by the Jedi, and now he's he was such a a BA in that episode.
Mm-hmm.
It was great. All right, well, I think that's all that we have. So.
If you lasted through this whole thing, bless your heart.
Eric, Shane, Michael, I want to thank you guys for talking about the Old
Aaron,
Republic
thanks
with
for
us.
coming to join me and Michael's podcast. Aaron, I just want to thank you personally from all of us. You're welcome here anytime. So,
all right.
This is A Certain Point of View by Shane Farley, Eric Boyley, Michael Leslie. Guest starring Aaron Elliott.
All right. I'd like to thank everyone for listening, and hopefully you'll tune in next time. Thank you.